My friends, something remarkable is happening on the global stage. For decades, the world has watched the same players move the same pieces, the powerful nations pulling the strings, shaping economies, setting the rules. But now, there's a quiet revolution unfolding, led by a country that knows what it means to rise from struggle and build from the ground up. That country is India. India has been watching, learning, and most importantly, building. While others were caught up in competition, India was crafting collaboration. While some nations saw Africa as a market, India saw it as a partner, not a land to extract from, but a continent to grow with. Through technology, trade, and trust, India has created a bridge between two regions that share a deep bond, a bond of resilience, of shared dreams, of fighting for a better tomorrow. Now, let's be clear. This wasn't about outmuscling anyone. It was about outthinking them. India didn't use armies or pressure. It used empathy, innovation, and timing. It provided affordable technology where others offered conditions. It invested in people where others demanded payback. And that's the genius of it. While America was busy protecting its old systems of influence, India built a new one, a human network stretching from Nairobi to New Delhi, from Lagos to Lucknow. A network built not on control, but on cooperation. This is not just a story about economics. It's a story about a shift in power, from dominance to partnership, from control to connection. And here's what it teaches us in the 21st century. The most powerful nations will not be those that can take the most, but those that can give the most, those that can build trust where there was doubt, hope where there was fear. So yes, India just used Africa to outsmart America, but not through manipulation or greed. It did it by understanding something deeper, that true power doesn't come from owning the world. It comes from uplifting it. India's approach toward Africa marks a profound shift in how nations engage with developing regions. Instead of rushing into the continent with the mindset of competition, to claim influence, dominate markets, or counter other superpowers, India chose a different path. It chose partnership. This was not a move born out of weakness or hesitation, but a vision. India understood something that many powerful nations have overlooked for years, that collaboration breeds longevity, while competition often breeds resistance. For decades, major powers have treated Africa like a chessboard, each move calculated to outdo the other. But India didn't see Africa as a piece in a geopolitical game. It saw a continent full of potential, people, and promise. India's strategy wasn't to win against someone, but to win with someone. Through trade agreements that emphasize shared benefit, technology transfers that empower local industries, and educational programs that strengthen human capital, India has created bonds that go beyond economics. These are relationships built on respect and mutual progress. When Indian engineers help set up solar grids in Kenya, or when Indian universities welcome students from Nigeria and Guyana with open arms, it's not charity, it's partnership, it's a vision of development where both sides grow together. India's leadership recognized that Africa's young population, abundant resources, and entrepreneurial energy represent not just an opportunity for business, but for long-term transformation. In doing so, India has built trust, something no amount of money can buy. Trust that it's not there to exploit, but to empower. While Western powers often attach political or economic conditions to their aid, India's investments carry a different message. We're here to grow together. That sincerity resonates deeply in a continent that has long been wary of external manipulation. This strategy is not flashy. It doesn't make headlines every day, but it's quietly rewriting the rules of engagement. Because when you stop seeing others as rivals and start seeing them as partners, you build something far stronger than influence. you build loyalty, understanding, and shared success. India's success in strengthening its relationship with Africa can be traced to one of its most powerful tools: the use of technology and education as instruments of diplomacy. Instead of relying on traditional forms of power, like military presence or economic leverage, India has built its influence through something far more sustainable: knowledge and innovation. This approach has become a defining feature of its foreign policy, allowing it to connect with African nations on a human level by empowering their people rather than exploiting their resources. India recognized early on that Africa's future rests in the hands of its youth, an ambitious, tech-savvy generation hungry for opportunities. So, rather than sending troops or imposing trade barriers, India sent teachers, engineers, and innovators. It opened its universities, expanded scholarship programs, and shared digital technologies that could change lives at the grassroots level. Technology became India's most persuasive language. Where other nations introduced expensive systems bound by complex conditions, India offered affordable and adaptable solutions built with accessibility in mind. From telemedicine platforms that link African patients to Indian doctors, to fintech innovations that bring banking to rural areas, India's influence spread not through domination, but through digital empowerment. Education, too, has been a cornerstone of this collaboration. Thousands of African students now study in India, not only gaining degrees, but also carrying back a deep respect for India's culture, values, and democratic spirit. They return home as ambassadors of a partnership that's based on learning, not lecturing. This strategy has allowed India to achieve something remarkable: to be seen not as a superpower trying to dominate, but as a mentor helping others rise. By focusing on human development, India has planted seeds of loyalty and friendship that no political rhetoric can match. It understands that when a nation helps another to educate its youth and connect its people, it earns a kind of respect that endures far longer than any financial aid or military contract ever could. India's connection with Africa is not simply strategic or economic. It is deeply emotional, historical, and cultural. The relationship between these two regions runs through the veins of shared struggle, common dreams, and parallel journeys of resilience. Both India and Africa have walked the long, painful road from colonization to independence. Both have fought against the chains of exploitation and inequality. And both have emerged with a collective determination to reclaim their voices on the global stage. When India looks at Africa, it doesn't see an unfamiliar land. It sees a reflection of its own past, nations rich in resources, but striving for self-sufficiency, people full of talent yet denied opportunities by systems designed elsewhere. That recognition creates an empathy that can't be manufactured through diplomacy alone. During the age of colonialism, both regions endured exploitation that drained their wealth and silenced their potential. But they also developed a similar spirit of resistance, a belief that dignity and progress come from within. India's struggle for freedom under Mahatma Gandhi's leadership became a source of inspiration for many African independence movements. Gandhi's journey began in Africa, and that symbolic connection still echoes today, reminding both sides that their destinies have long been intertwined. Today, this bond manifests not only in politics, but in culture, education, and trade. Indian movies, music, and cuisine are loved across African cities, while African art and fashion have found a home in India. There's an ease in this exchange, a sense that both sides are rediscovering parts of themselves in each other. Indian diaspora communities have lived in Africa for over a century, contributing to its economies and societies. They're not outsiders, they're bridges, living proof of how naturally these two civilizations blend. This deep cultural and historical connection gives India a kind of moral credibility that few other nations possess. It allows Indian leaders to speak with authenticity when they talk about fairness, sovereignty, and cooperation. It gives Indian companies a warmer welcome because the relationship feels familiar and trustworthy. And it allows both regions to approach modern challenges from climate change to inequality, not as teacher and student, but as equals striving for a shared destiny. India's engagement with Africa represents a refreshing and deeply human approach to global economics, one centered not on exploitation, but on inclusion. For far too long, Africa's relationship with major powers was built on dependency. Wealthier nations extended loans tied with hidden strings or entered trade deals that favored the powerful and left local economies vulnerable. India broke that cycle. It presented an alternative, a model where economic progress is mutual, where development doesn't come at the cost of sovereignty, and where prosperity is shared rather than extracted. India understood that the true foundation of a lasting partnership is trust, and trust cannot exist in a relationship built on imbalance. That's why, instead of imposing debt-heavy agreements, India focused on projects that empower African nations to stand on their own feet. It invested in industries that create local jobs, not just profit for foreign corporations. In agriculture, India shared its expertise in irrigation, crop management, and food processing, lessons learned from decades of transforming its own rural economy. In manufacturing, Indian enterprises partnered with African firms to build textiles, pharmaceuticals, and automobile industries that serve both regional and global markets. Each of these efforts contributed to a broader ecosystem of self-reliance, one where Africa's growth fuels India's growth, and vice versa. Energy cooperation has been another pillar of this inclusive model. Through the International Solar Alliance, India has helped several African countries harness solar power to bring electricity to rural communities. Every village that lights up because of an India-backed solar grid represents not only progress, but also independence from foreign control. Indian products, from medicines to machinery, are designed to be affordable without compromising quality. In the health sector, India's pharmaceutical industry has become a lifeline for Africa. By providing generic drugs at a fraction of the cost, India has saved millions of lives and made healthcare accessible to people who were once excluded by high Western prices. This model of inclusivity extends beyond economics. It touches the social and political fabric of both regions. Indian initiatives encourage the participation of women and young entrepreneurs in African economies, understanding that inclusive growth must include all voices. By giving people the tools to build their own success, India has ensured that its presence in Africa is seen not as domination, but as empowerment. Timing in geopolitics can often mean the difference between influence and irrelevance, and India has mastered the art of timing in its relationship with Africa. While many global powers were preoccupied with their own rivalries and domestic uncertainties, India quietly stepped into the space others had neglected. In the years when the United States turned inward, focusing on its domestic polarization and its strategic contest with China, much of its foreign policy attention drifted away from Africa. China, meanwhile, expanded rapidly through its Belt and Road Initiative, but its aggressive lending practices began to draw criticism across the continent. Into this shifting landscape stepped India, not as a replacement for these powers, but as a new kind of partner, one that offered balance where others demanded allegiance. India's geopolitical timing was precise. It understood that Africa's next chapter, driven by a young population, rising digital literacy, and an urgent need for sustainable growth, would determine the shape of the global economy in the 21st century. Rather than competing with the West or China for control, India chose to cooperate with Africa for creation. During the pandemic, when supply chains collapsed and vaccine nationalism dominated, India stepped in to supply affordable vaccines and essential medicines to African countries. It didn't make loud political statements. It simply acted, reinforcing its image as a dependable ally in times of crisis. This responsiveness strengthened its ties and proved that India's partnership was not situational but steadfast. This ability to move when others hesitate, to build when others retreat, is what distinguishes India's geopolitical approach. Its timing was guided not by competition but by vision, an understanding that influence built in moments of neglect often endures the longest. India's growing relationship with Africa represents more than just trade, diplomacy, or influence. It embodies a new kind of leadership, one that redefines what power means in the 21st century. For too long, global leadership has been measured by the size of armies or the reach of economies. But India has chosen a different path, one rooted in empathy, inclusivity, and shared progress. In its engagement with Africa, India's actions have spoken louder than any declaration. It has not lectured African leaders on governance or policy. It has not demanded allegiance in return for aid. Instead, it has extended its hand as an equal, offering resources, training, and innovation that empower local communities to shape their own destinies. That humility, that willingness to listen and learn, has become India's greatest strength. India's leadership reflects the voice of the developing world. Having once been a colony itself, it understands the pain of dependency and the struggle for self-reliance. It knows what it means to rise against the odds, to build from scarcity, to earn progress through perseverance rather than privilege. When India engages with Africa, it doesn't just bring investments, it brings a vision of a world order not built on domination, but on cooperation, not on exploitation, but on empowerment. Through this quiet revolution in leadership, India has reminded the world that power is not measured in dominance, but in the ability to unite. It has shown that the true test of greatness lies not in how much one nation can take from others, but in how much it can give. Ending, my friends, what we are witnessing today is more than a shift in trade or diplomacy. It is the dawn of a new global mindset. For generations, power meant control, wealth meant dominance, and progress was measured by how much one nation could command. But India and Africa are showing the world something different, that the future belongs to those who lift others up, not those who hold them down. India's partnership with Africa is not just a geopolitical success story, it's a moral statement. It reminds us that leadership does not require arrogance, and influence does not require force. It proves that when nations choose empathy over ego, collaboration over competition, and purpose over pride, they build something no empire ever could: lasting trust. So as the old powers of the world wrestle with rivalry, India and Africa are quietly building a new legacy, one rooted in equality, respect, and shared destiny. And that, my friends, is how a new world begins, not with conquest, but with connection, not through dominance, but through dignity. Because in the end, the greatest nations are not the ones that stand above others, they are the ones that stand with them. And in that truth lies the very essence of progress, the kind of progress that lifts all of humanity forward.